So far in this class, we have seen some well-designed databases and we have learned lots of database terminology to assist us in designing a database. The textbook talks about 6 steps to properly design a database. I will go through these 6 steps slightly different than your textbook. It is your choice if you want to go by my steps, the steps in the textbook, or come up with your own. However, the 6 steps I'm about to show you will assist you in successfully designing a database that has been normalized to third normal form. Let's take a look at each of these steps separately by beginning a database scenario looking at a collection of CDs. Let's look at our scenario. You are the owner of a music store. You need to set up a system to automate all of the daily business activities for the store. You sell CDs and sheet music. For each sale, you would like to record a unique transaction number and the date of the sale. You would also like to know which employee made the sale, each item being sold, the quantity of that item, the amount of each item, the form of payment, and the total amount for the purchase. For the employee, you need to know the name, address, and phone number so you can contact them if you get a bonus for sale. For all of the items in the store, you need to know the type and name of the item, the artist or group or composer, the price of that item, and the amount of that item currently in stock. Step 1 in the database design method is called entities. In this step, you read the requirements, identify the entities involved, and name the entities. What I like to do during this step is to highlight in different colors the major ideas while reading the scenario. This helps me determine the entities to start with. In this scenario, the first 3 sentences give an overview of the database. The next 3 sentences highlighted in blue refer to transactions. The information highlighted in purple refers to the employee, and the information in orange is about items in the CD store. I have my 3 entities: transaction, employee, and item. That completes step 1. Let's see what needs to happen next. Step 2 is called attributes because I need to identify the attributes for all entities. For this step, I like to underline the keywords I think would make good attributes. Then I list them in the proper table according to my colored highlighting identified in step 1. For the transaction entity, I have chosen transaction ID, date of sale, employee ID, item ID, quantity, item price, transaction type, and total sale as the attributes. For the employees table, I have chosen the employee ID, the employee name, employee address, and employee phone as the attributes. For the item table, I have chosen item ID, item type, item name, artist composer, price, and on hand as the attributes. When choosing the attributes for the entities, you may have come up with different names, and that would be okay. It is important that you pick attributes names that make sense so that when you are working with the database later when coding, the attributes make sense. Let's move on to step 3. Step 3 is called PKs. In this step, I need to identify a unique primary key for each entity. For our transaction entity, I have chosen transaction ID. For the employee entity, I have chosen employee ID. And for the item entity, I have chosen item ID. That's it for step 3. Let's move on to step 4. For step 4, you draw an ER diagram and identify the relationships between the tables by adding the foreign keys if they don't exist or labeling them. Use the business rules to help you know which part of the relationship line is the one side and which part of the relationship line should be the many side. Remember, there are 2 business rules for every relationship line drawn. Let's take a look at the relationship between the employee and transaction tables. For the business rule, it makes sense to say each employee can have many transactions and each transaction is associated with only one employee. Place close attention to the end of both sentences and the words I have highlighted in green. This tells me which table should be the one side and which table should be the many side. In this case, the transaction table should be the many side and the employee table should be the one side. Now see if you can look at the business rules for the relationship between the transaction and item table and determine which is the one side and which is the many side. If you said the transaction table is the many side and the item table is the one side, you are correct. Let's take a look at step 5. In step 5, you have to identify the functional dependencies that exist among attributes. You watched a video and completed an assignment on functional dependency. So if you need a refresher, rewatch that video or refer to your notes in your journal. When looking at the transaction table, all attributes are dependent except for the item price. The item price has to do with the item and not the transaction. All items are dependent in the employee table, and all items are dependent in the item table. Our new table will become what you see here. Let's look at step 6. For step 6, you normalize the tables to third normal form and modify the database structure if necessary. Let's check each of our tables for 1NF, 2NF, and 3NF. For the transaction table, all attributes are okay except for the total sell attribute, which is a calculated column and a violation of third normal form. So you will have to remove that attribute. You can write code later for calculations. There are no normalization violations for the employee table or the item table. Therefore, our final tables become as you see here. Now that we have our final tables, let's review the 6 steps. Step 1, entities. Step 2, attributes. Step 3, primary keys. Step 4, relationships and foreign keys. Step 5, dependency. And step 6, normalization. It seems like a long process, but most steps go pretty quickly the more practice you have. Now try the comprehensive examples assignment on your own.